Okay, we are now recording.
Okay, I am calling to order the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of the Board of Directors for Marin Water for June 24th, 2021. Our first item of business is to call the roll.
Director Bragman.
Here.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Russell. Director Schmidt.
Here.
And President Kohler.
I'm here. Okay, I'm now looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move approval to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item, Terry?
There are none.
Okay, then we're looking for a roll call vote.
Director Bragman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
And President Kohler.
Aye. All right, we are now open to public comment on any item that is not on the agenda for today. Do we have any public comments, Terry?
There are none.
Okay, then moving on to the calendar, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the minutes of the last meeting, which took place on May 27th.
Move approval to adopt minutes. Second.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
There are none.
Then roll call vote, please.
Director Bragman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
And President Kohler.
Aye. Okay, we're going to move on to the second item, which is the human resources updates. All the other items on the calendar for today are information only, so no more actions will be required.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I wanted to check to make sure I'm not on mute. Good morning, I'm Vicki Garay with the Human Resources Department, and wanted to thank you for allowing me this time this morning to share some initiatives that are underway and some that are newly implemented to support the positive employee experience here at the district. So I'm going to share a few with you. I will share our support that we provided to employees during the pandemic, an update on our policies, our efforts with diversity, equity, and inclusion, a new online performance evaluation system, and a flex staffing program where we've developed career ladders for employees, and also a few other initiatives. Before I start, I wanted to provide you with some general information about the workforce. There are the three divisions: engineering services, operations, administrative services, and the watershed is a standalone department, as you note on the org chart. And of course, you have the general manager's office and legal.
Vicki, if I can just ask you a question about that on the chart. I think, and can let me know if I'm wrong about this, but I think like the general counsel, the head of finance reports directly to has the dual reporting to the general manager and the board.
You are correct. As the treasurer, I will make that notation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, we have a nice record when it comes to years of service. And I'd like to attribute that to the job satisfaction that employees have, because they have an opportunity to work on meaningful projects that where they serve the public, and also they're able to use their skills and enhance their skills. So if you note on the chart here, 52% of our employees have been with the district for over 10 years, and 25% have been with the district for over 20 years. To provide some perspective on employee retention, this chart represents our retirements, our voluntary separations, and our involuntary separations, and that would be like probationary employees. On average, only 2 people leave the district to pursue other opportunities. We had 8 retirements in the last 3 years. Each year we had 8 retirements, and in 2017 we had 20 retirements. And in comparison to the average local government turnover, our turnover is low. In the industry, in our industry, turnover rate is 1.7 to 2%. In all industries, it's 3 to 4%. Noted on the chart on the left, the blue line are for hires, the dotted line separations, and that spike you see is March of right after 2020. So that's part of the pandemic. Okay. So on the right side of the chart, you see MMWD's turnover rates, and we've been lower than the average for our industry, if you note there. So with that said, we want to keep a healthy workforce. We want to continue to support employees through initiatives. And so those are the initiatives that I'm going to share with you today. So during COVID, so as with many employers, COVID was the most impactful event on the workforce in 2020. And so there were, of course, there was a plethora of federal, state, and local requirements, and we met all of those requirements on time. We were ahead of some of them, in fact. But in addition to that, we employed a number of strategies to support staff through the pandemic. We had a business continuity plan that was in place before the shelter in place, and that was to support social distancing. And eventually, when the shelter in place came into play, we were already ready for that. We provided technology and ergonomic support with the help of our IT department, the HR department, our business continuity team. Employees were able to seamlessly transition to telework. We offered a loan program for ergonomic support. So employees were able to borrow their ergonomic chairs, ergonomic keyboards, and things like that as they were trying to set up their workspaces at home. So we wanted them to have a safe and proper workstation as much as possible. The MMWD leave program was extended, and that was the extension of the Families First Coronavirus Act program. The federal government offered a leave program. It was mandatory for employers, and that program expired in December of 2020. We voluntarily extended our program to March of 2021, and then California mandated a program in April of 2021. So with our extension, we were able to provide a bridge for our employees. And so our employees were always covered with that leave. And I believe that that provided some relief and peace of mind for employees. We developed an internal contact tracing program. We also developed safety programs for employees working in the office and for employees working out throughout the service area. And those programs were designed to reduce exposure to the virus. We had 7 separate workplace COVID positives. We had no community spread within our organization. And so that was good. We had regular updates that we sent to employees, and that provided information on COVID testing sites, vaccination sites. We also provided information on stress management and mental health services for our employees. So now we seem to be getting to the other side of this pandemic, and now we're looking at our return to office strategy. And we anticipate a full return in September. We're targeting September because schools should be in full session in September, and our employees won't have to contend with childcare issues. So that's why that's our target date. Okay. Updating our policies is another important workforce initiative. Some of our policies had not been updated since the 1980s and the 1990s. And of course, much has changed with respect to employment law and workplace culture. So those have been updated, and we're going to have a policy review schedule. So our policies are reviewed once every 2 years so that we don't find ourselves in this place again with outdated policies. But I wanted to note that our policies were updated, of course, to comply with existing and new legislation, because there was a lot of new legislation coming in 2020. But our language was also, and it was also updated to for new tech, to support new technology. But our language was also supports a positive workplace and an inclusive workplace. So the language on our policies have been changed. So we're working with a consultant right now on our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And this, with COVID, with the demands of COVID and the demands for expertise in this area, this initiative has been slow to take off. But we will be kicking off work very soon with this consultant. And we'll be working with him to explore opportunities in the workplace. We have done some work around diversity. Well, we've done some training, I should say, within HR. So the HR team has participated in a number of webinars, but two of them notable ways to remove bias from the hiring process. And we also participated in AWWA sponsored webinar, which is incorporating diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workforce development strategy. And so that was great to hear from the other water agencies to get that perspective.
Vicki, I have a question.
Yes.
Are you doing any sort of targeted outreach to communities in Marin, like the Canal, Marin City, or West Marin, to try to bring in, people specifically from those communities?
Right. So yes, thank you for asking that question. That was my next point. We have also increased our efforts in reaching out to community-based organizations. So to name a few, we've reached out to Multicultural Center of Marin, Community Action Centers of Marin, and some parks and recreation centers, but also some other organizations as well, but those are just a few.
Okay. Like the Canal Community Alliance and folks like that?
I don't know about that one, but I'm making a note of it right now.
Okay, I can send you a couple others too, okay?
Okay,
And
great.
you can just see if you want to use them.
Yeah,
Okay.
an important one would be the Multicultural Center. I think I heard you say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even Jack, the Youth to Work group,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
John Hanley,
Yeah.
John
Very
Hanley may know some
Yeah.
youth that want to get some opportunities.
And I assume, Vicki, that you've, particularly on the September back to office, has all been coordinated with our SEIU people and MAPE and any other unions we're involved with?
Yes, we will. Employees will be given notice in advance. And if the unions discuss the impact, we are always open to that discussion. We have regular labor management meetings once a month. And of course, we will be sharing that with the union as well. And that's an opportunity for discussion on that item as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Do we do affirmative action hiring? Or
No, we do not do affirmative action hiring.
Okay. Is that permitted?
No, it's actually, if I can speak to that, we can't hire on the basis of specific racial or ethnic criteria because of Prop 209 in California, but it doesn't preclude us from doing outreach and encouraging people from diverse communities and disadvantaged communities to take advantage of opportunities within the district.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Thanks, Molly. And we do a target recruitment. So for example, we would contact women in engineering when we have engineering positions, when we have accounting positions, National Association of Black Accountants. So we do look for those opportunities through our recruitment process.
Do we know what the racial makeup is of our workforce?
I do have that information. I want to say 80% male. I do have it. I can share it with
That's
you.
okay. That's okay. You can send it out, I'll send you an email. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, I can send it to you today. Yes, I have that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other questions before I move on to the next slide?
I'm sorry, Vicki. I just wanted to say that I'm excited. I think I speak for the whole board. I'm really thrilled about the DEI program, and I'm delighted that you've hired a consultant. And I think the more that we can do as an institution, really an anchor institution in the community, to not just expand these efforts, but to make sure people know about them, because I'm not sure they do. And we have a lot of messaging challenges right now, so I don't want to add to that. But I think this is a really important and fabulous initiative. So the more we can do to get you support for that and make sure the community is behind it and is aware of it, I think the better.
Thank you.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. So another way to support our healthy work is through proper direction and feedback. And so, you know, we wanted to give an emphasis on this by modernizing our employee performance evaluation process. So our current program, we use a Word document, and that same template is used for all employees. So we want to be able to change that. So with our current, with this new electronic tool, we can easily manage interchangeable competencies. So for example, a treatment plant operator would have a different competency than an administrative assistant because their jobs are very different. And so we want to target the competencies specific to the job classifications. With the tool, because the tool is online, it's a web-based tool, it can be accessed anywhere throughout the year. So that's helpful. But the way the tool will work is at the beginning of the year, you set your annual work plan at the beginning of the year. And throughout the year, you can use this as an interactive, it's very interactive. So throughout the year, you can set up check-ins regarding work plans. You can set deadlines throughout the year. Mid-year discussions can be set, and all of that stuff can be documented in the electronic system. And so that's the good thing about this one. And then at the end of the year, you set your ratings at the end of the year. The system will also allow for check-ins. So, for metrics. So when we get those ratings at the end of the year, we'll have metrics. The division directors will have metrics for their departments. We have them for HR so that we can look at the strengths of our organization and also look at opportunities for training. So that's a good thing about this. Right now, we just have a tool, which is a piece of paper, and we're only looking at it from person to person, not as an aggregate. So this gives us that opportunity. The tool also has 360 evaluation capability, and it also allows for more than one rater to contribute to a performance evaluation. So if an employee has more than one supervisor, then they can add to the evaluation. So we're creating a program to support our internal promotion process. The past practice.
But before, I'm sorry, Vicki, can we go back to some questions about this? This is really, I'm sure we're going to say this a couple of times here. This is really exciting to see as well. I'm really glad to hear and see that we're evolving from this, from an antiquated paper Word document form to something that is online, that's easy to use and has these different elements. Just a couple of questions about who will say, in terms of the competencies, who will define what those competencies are for the different positions and roles?
Right, so HR obviously will be supporting the management team in defining those competencies if they're specific to classifications in their group. Okay. There are classifications throughout the organization, and of course we will coordinate with the various managers to make sure that we identify their needs in terms of competencies and that they're addressed.
Okay, great, great.
Mm-hmm.
I would, going back to the DEI work that you're talking about, I think that, and this is something that's happened within the organization that I work for when I'm not serving on the board, is that DEI is part of our competencies that we've integrated. it's and it, to the extent that it can show up as something that when it's part of your competencies, it's actually becomes something that's real and considered in people's evaluations. So encourage to the extent that that can also be a metric. You know, finding the right one for the right positions and so forth. I know it needs to be tailored, but that's a way to make to send the message that it's really actually part of the workplace.
Exactly. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just like the US Army is getting criticized for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we can be leaders.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When do these work plans get put into place? When does the year, when you say at the start of the year, what's that mean?
So each employee has an evaluation start date. So it's based on their hire date or the date that they moved into their new position. So if the person promoted, you know, then the clock starts on that new position.
So just because I know that will include, I would assume, of course, a work plan and so forth, would it make more, it seems interesting to not synchronize your work plans and your evaluations so that when a work plan is created, it's created at the same time for all people, maybe within a division at least, so that there's synchronization of what that work is and how people will work together. Would it make sense to, regardless of people's start dates, try to find some way to synchronize when those things occur? Because it also would probably, I would imagine, make it possible to be able to, you know, come back and annually report on how things are versus something constantly rolling through the year.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely look at that. We could probably isolate that to like our management team first, and then start there. Because with our represented employees, the performance evaluation is addressed in the CBA. So we have to, you know, follow that pattern that's addressed there. But not in terms of the work plan, but with just in terms of the timing of the evaluation.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I just put that, I sort of leave that to you folks to decide what makes the most sense. But I think that with respect to, you know, being able to efficiently report back to the board once a year, just how performance, you know, evaluation, how the system is working and so forth, just might make it easier to talk about how things are going. In terms of the 360 evaluation capability, I'm hoping that's a capability that actually is used, at least for management and supervisor roles, because it's I think that those are particularly places within the structure of an organization that need that kind of 360 evaluation. Do you need, is that a capability that you're exploring, or is the intent to include that as part of the new program?
So it's when we looked at the product, we wanted to make sure that it included the 360 evaluation so that we could explore that option for staff if we wanted to go in that direction.
Okay.
Director Schmidt, I was just going to say that I think I agree 360s are a great tool. And in fact, this year I did it with my staff to start it. And then we were talking about the SLT senior leadership team would be next and move it down in the organization. You know, for a culture that hasn't done that, it does take some time and effort to appreciate the value along with the vulnerabilities that come with that and develop a process that, so I've talked to Vicki a lot about this, and we will this next year be going down into the management team and kind of starting to develop that culture.
So your intent, if I can understand what you're saying, Ben, is that your intent is over this next year to incorporate 360 evaluations for the management team, and I assume down through the supervisor level. And sorry if I'm not using the right architectural language.
Yeah, so generally we have kind of senior management team, and supervisors. I don't think we've defined precisely the timing. I'm trying to indicate that we do see the value and are looking to start moving that down. I don't know this year we'll get through the whole management team, as you know, depending on our approach. At times it can be very resource intensive. This tool may provide for kind of more of a streamlining. Often it's good, at least initially, to have kind of a facilitator or coach help the individuals interpret the results and that sort of stuff. So anyway, we kind of need to find, starting at the top and moving down, an approach that works well with our resources and a shift of our culture to this sort of tool, an opportunity.
Well, as somebody, again, I do these, I have them done with me, and I do them with others that I manage currently and have done so for a number of years. It's not a substantial amount of work. It's usually a form that people will provide for whom they're evaluating. The information only goes to that person's supervisor. It doesn't go back to the people. They don't see at least in the system that we use. I just want to, I can understand that it might seem surprising within a culture that hasn't done it before. So I want to respect that. But I want to also highlight that it is, I think, becoming a standard practice. So it shouldn't really shock people that this is coming, and it's not an indication that there's heavy-handed management. It's just modernizing our HR, which we are doing across the board. So doing it just now in one fell swoop, I think honestly it would fit within a whole suite of changes that just might make it easier to just see that there's a whole new system and it includes this. But it's a really important way to ensure that people do see themselves as working as part of a team. Those people that you work with that are people who you will be evaluating you, they're part of your team, and I think it breeds a good team culture. So I want to encourage that you institute this year, and just it won't go smoothly the first year. It always takes time to introduce a new whole program like this, but it's, I think, extremely important.
Good.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the performance evaluation system? Thank you. Thank you for those questions and comments.
Thank you.
We're also creating an internal promotion process. I think I started that part of the presentation, I'm not sure. But our past practice or process was not documented, and it didn't provide for transparency. So this new program provides for a more objective and transparent process. So the program establishes objective criteria for non-competitive promotion within the designated series. So for example, a customer service rep 1 could advance to a customer service rep 2, provided that that person met the criteria without competition, so they could move promotion in place. So this is good. This is a good example because we want all of our customer service reps to have that higher level of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So positions that are identified for this program and part of the career ladder list are positions that substantial amount of the work is pretty much the same work, but again, the second or higher level or the journey level position requires a higher level of knowledge, skills, and ability. And so those are the positions that are a part of this program. This program will have a policy to ensure that employees and everyone is aware and understands how the program works, and they're aware of it. Managers will document their justification and document that the employees have met the criteria on a standardized form, and there will be instructions for consistency in application of this program. Any questions on this one? And we have a commuter benefit program. As you know, the board approved this program back in the fall. We have 76% of our employees live outside of the immediate area. So considering that, we determined that this benefit would support a good number of our staff and would support employee retention.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Vicki. I missed that. What percentage people of our employees live outside of the area?
76.
76.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's really significant.
It is. And so that's why this program is very important to us. We believe that it really will support a lot of our employees. Employees can save up to $1,200 a year on their taxes. And of course, we have the match, as we mentioned. And we want to encourage people to use the bike program, where we have the reimbursement for the bikes as well. But also to note, we have 35% of our employees live in Sonoma County, and that's right with the SMART train. So hopefully employees will take advantage of this program, use the SMART train, and have a less stressful commute to and from work. So that's our
The Novato employees can take it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And so other updates, we have we're working on a more modern applicant tracking program. The new program, a platform, this will have more functionality, and we'll be able to get metrics on time to fill so that we can be more efficient in our hiring process. The platform links directly to governmentjobs.com. So whenever we post a job, it goes straight to governmentjobs.com, which is a larger audience than our current platform. So we can reach more people. And it has a lot of functionality. The one that I am excited about, and it seems small, is that we can text candidates from the system. So, some people don't check their email, or, they find that text messaging is easier. If they're currently working, they can just respond quickly to a text message from us. So I like that function. And also during the hiring process, candidates can complete their new hire documents online. And so this provides for ease in submitting new hire documents. And we are exploring a job sharing program. Oops, sorry. So as a result of the pandemic, some people are just rethinking their priorities, and we hope to offer some flexibility for employees and opportunity for them to focus on their personal goals. And so the flex staffing program, the job sharing program will allow 2 employees to share 1 FTE at 50% of the time. And so that way one person can move on and do whatever they want to do with the other part of their time. So job sharing has been known to help with recruiting, because you can target people who are well qualified that don't want to work full time. And also, you can also offer opportunities for employees who are currently working, who don't want to give up their job, but they want to explore their goals. So again, like I said, the draft policy is currently under review for that. And
this is great, Vicki. All of this information is really fantastic, and I really want to thank you for bringing it forward. I just want to say I'm especially excited about the job sharing program. I'm sure it's going to be open to everybody, but I think that's especially important to be supporting our employees who are parents, because it can be just challenging. So it's a great option.
Right. Yes, I agree. And so our next steps is we will continue to look for opportunities to support our employees. And so that concludes my presentation. And if there are any questions.
Well,
Vicki,
thanks again. But, sorry, go ahead.
Got a couple questions, Vicki. Are our employees required to be vaccinated?
No. Employers can require vaccination. We are asking employees to provide us proof of vaccination. But we are not.
What's the policy? Do we have a policy as far as requiring non-vaccinated employees to wear masks?
So the Cal OSHA standards were just approved, as you know, last week, and the governor gave his executive order that they would come into play right away. And so right now, our employees are continuing to wear a mask as we update our protection program, because we do need to have that, we should have a protection program for other employees who are not vaccinated. So once we get those things into play, then employees will be able to take off their mask, and those who are not vaccinated we have a tracking system where we maintain their confidentiality or their privacy.
Yeah,
So they'll be able to take
yeah,
off that.
it's tricky. The Civic Center is going to reopen. You have to sign in if you've been vaccinated. If you haven't, you have to wear a mask. So, you know, it's a tricky kind of road.
Yeah, we have a process that we have already outlined. And so we'll be able to monitor who is vaccinated and who's not vaccinated. And we will provide, as required by Cal OSHA, N95 masks for those who want to wear them voluntarily.
Okay, thanks a lot. It was a good presentation.
Thank you.
Vicki, do we have any idea how many aren't vaccinated?
54.8% of our employees are vaccinated, have reported to be vaccinated. I imagine once we communicate about whether or not who can wear masks in the workplace individually, again, maintaining confidentiality, that some people will come forward with their vaccination records. So we'll have a higher rate of vaccinated employees. In our building here at 220 Mellon, we have about 70% vaccinated.
I'm just wondering if we should put on an education program for the benefits of vaccination or something like that.
Nice. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Is it okay to ask people about their hesitancy? The ones who aren't vaccinated?
No, we stay away from that. We only ask the question of, are you vaccinated? And if you are not, we don't ask them why, because it could lead into other privacy concerns or privacy matters.
It could be based on health issues that we shouldn't be requiring people to disclose.
Right. And some employees will probably not want to get vaccinated, but we do have a reasonable accommodation program.
Yeah.
So
What does that mean?
So they can be reasonably accommodated if they have health issues that will require that, where they can't take the vaccination, or if they have religious reasons, we can reasonably accommodate them.
Yeah.
The important thing is that we keep everybody safe. I mean, while accommodating people with those issues. I'm just conscious of the time, guys. It's after 10 and we have a very full agenda. Are there any more questions before we go to public comment? Okay, thank you so much again, Vicki. This was a really timely and very comprehensive presentation, very clear, very accessible. I'm really grateful for it. I know the rest of the board is. So moving on, oh, sorry, any public comment on this item, Terry?
None.
Great. So now we're moving on to the monthly financial update.
Good morning, President Kohler, members of the board. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this will be the financial update for the month of May. I'm joined this morning by McYoung Postelnik. She's our finance manager, does a lot of work with financial reporting, gathering the data for these. And then we're also joined by Carrie Pollard. We've added a slide at the end for the board request on conservation programs that Carrie will speak to. So again, as we always do with a look at the revenues, and if you're following along in the agenda package, it's attachment 3 to this item. And you can see that water revenues were slightly ahead. If we're measuring linearly, as the end of May, we'd be about 92% through the budget. And we're right about there on water revenues at $76.2 million. And you can see the breakdown there is primarily water sales at $53.6 million. And then you've got service charges at $18.5 million and watershed management fee at $4.1 million to comprise that $76.2 million. And then the other revenues that are listed out in attachment 3, things like rents, grants, watershed rents, interest that we get in our portfolio. That's a small amount of revenue, $2.7 million. So overall, we're $78.9 million, right about 92%, about spot on our revenues. Fire flow fees, we're at 95% plus, and just remember those come in as part of the biannual property tax remittances. So we received the last big bullet of that in April. So everything that we get now is mostly delinquencies. And then capital revenue, which includes the capital maintenance fee, is at 14.6 million or 82.8% of budget. So if we put all of those revenues together, we're right about 91% of revenues so far through the fiscal year, and we just have 1 month remaining in the fiscal year. We've been showing this to the board over the last several months to kind of adjust for the seasonality that we see in some of our revenues. Probably a less meaningful slide now that we just have 1 month remaining in the fiscal year, but you can see there that water sales overall kind of vary month by month, whether we're ahead or behind budget. There is really no rhyme or reason to that. But overall, we're about 4% ahead on actuals compared to budget on our water sales. Service charges are right about on at 101%, 1% over, and then we're at 96% of the watershed fee. This is our monthly sales comparison with the fiscal year 20. So fiscal year 20 are those bars in red that you can see there, and then the blue bars are this current fiscal year. So you can see that May in water sales, this is in dollars, in millions of dollars. We're running a little bit ahead of last year. So some of that may be actual, a little bit to do with rainfall. There's actually about 2.3 inches of rain last May. There was 0 inches this May. Could account for a little bit of that. And you see a little bit of that in April too. We were behind a little bit. We had a little bit of rain this year, about 1/3 of an inch in April compared to about 2 inches last year. So some of this could be based on just the amount of rainfall that we have. And then this is a year-to-date comparison broken down by the different resi codes or customer classes that we have. So you can see at the bottom here, our total, we're about 208,000 ahead compared to last year. That's about a 2% increase. So really not a very marked increase. You can see where the big drivers in that there, single family is ahead by about 7%. But then you've got commercial and industrial that's down by about 15%. So when you total those all up, we're about 2% ahead of where we were at the same time in the past fiscal year.
Do you know, going back on that one slide, if you go back one, why is recycled water use down in this time?
Because the plant was off. It just came online, Money.
Oh, right. Okay.
It just come back on the last couple of months. And then we've been showing the board what our delinquency picture is looking like. It's kind of interesting now that you're kind of, again, the last couple of months now, we've been able to see data kind of, COVID compared to COVID time period. So if you see the 30 days are actually down, 60 days are actually down. And then some of these other categories, especially the 180-day and 365-day delinquent, those still have large numbers, but I think what we're starting to see here is kind of the pig working its way through the python there. So we're starting to see reductions in those 30 and 60 days, and I'd imagine that will continue into the 90 and 180 days as we continue to move through this event. And then we also take this data for the board's request several months ago, and we took the 60-day picture from this chart, and we kind of dissect that to see how it's looking. And there you can see the, there's a big fall off in dollars in past due. In single family residential, that's fallen by $84,000, down about 25%. And then overall, you can see that the totals were for the delinquency in the 60-day past due are down by 10% compared to the same time last year. So that is an optimistic picture for us. I'll show you the tier consumption. It's interesting to look back to 2015 here. Our consumption fell down in 16, 17. I think that was following the drought years that we had, and then has built back up to normal levels the past several years. And then you can also see the composition here. About 75% of our customers, as they always have been, are in tier 1. And then if you add tier 2 to that, I think it's about 90% of total customers that are within tier 1, tier 2. Very small portions of our customer base that fall into those higher tier 3s and tier 4s. And then we look at the AMI data to get a little more real-time data. We got about 1,200 meters that are residential meters in Tiburon and Belvedere. And here, when we look at this, you can see the green line here is the current May. The orange line is May the previous year. And then the blue line is May of 2019, or fiscal year 2019. So you can kind of see that our usage based on AMI data for this target area has fallen in May, but then we saw last month in April that we were a little bit ahead of the previous years. So a little bit of a mixed bag there, but it does look like, at least compared to last year in May, by AMI data, that our usage is down a bit.
Chuck, would you say that that's representational though? I mean, with all due respect, Larry Russell, I think this is a more high water use area generally than the service area as a whole. I just want to make sure that we're understanding what this data is really showing us. And I'm not confident that it is, I'm just wondering if this is a little bit of an anomaly, that's all. And that given the normally high water use in this area.
Yeah, it could be anomalous, President Kohler. I mean, it certainly doesn't necessarily line up with the sales data that we showed you earlier, but that lags a little bit. So,
okay.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I think we're doing a little bit better on conservation than this seems to indicate.
Yeah. I think if you look at this with production data.
I don't follow the logic, Cynthia. It should be easier for these folks to cut the water usage.
It should be, but okay, I don't want to go there. They're also a little bit price. I guess what I'm saying is they're also a little bit price inelastic, right? I mean, it's not an area where people are quick necessarily to cut back.
The price is not an issue, but that doesn't mean they're not wound up to help. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
They should be able to do better. And I'm encouraged. I don't know what percentage drop is that, Chuck. It's a little hard to read on these curves. It looks like 5% maybe, or 10.
Yeah, you're dropping there from about
24
down to 22. So yeah, I mean, that is about a 10%, back the envelope, that's about a 10% drop.
Our averages. But I really think we should hawk this AMI data, because I think it's the one hammer we have to keep track of people's usage and encourage them to decrease their usage. They're probably not going to like that there's an AMI and now it's being used in the reverse direction, but be that as it may.
Yeah.
I have a question, and this may be more for Ben than Chuck, but we had the breakdown of the different tier categories and the percentages, and that represents the percentage of customers that are in the various tiers. The question is, can we translate that of tier? Do we have that data?
I missed a piece of the data. Go back to that graph, Chuck.
Do we have, Ben, do we have the data of how much water each tier is using?
Right. So this graphic isn't percents, right? So this is, this is consumption
of customers.
Yeah.
It is consumption. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in CCF.
Okay.
I was going to actually ask, I'm
Okay,
glad you brought this chart up, Larry. I was going to actually ask when you do this again, like don't bother for now, but we've seen this chart before. I think it's really helpful, but could you do it in acre feet? I just think it's hard to conceptualize CCFs. Is that feasible?
I think we can do that, yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, and we show you more AMI data here. This is a much smaller sample size of 82 meters, but for institutional and business meters. And here you can see in May, they're actually a little bit ahead of the previous May. But if you look at May of 19, they're down considerably off that. And then April, we'd seen that they were a little bit ahead also on the business meters, but again, down compared to the previous April. So this is a very small sample size. I'm not sure that data really gives you too much indication of what's going on there.
Chuck, do we have a plan for how we're going to adjust around our 40% reduction, assuming we're successful achieving it?
You mean the reduction, the associated reduction in revenues?
I do.
Yeah, we do have a plan. I mean, keep in mind that we have, $9.4 million in the stabilization fund that we can get to. And we also have, I think, in excess of $30 million in reserves that we'll show you in one of the later slides. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the, I think we talked about in a previous meeting, we kind of showed our plan to kind of dip into that, that stabilization fund first, I think, and then work our way into the reserves if we need to do that.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And one other question about the data, as far as the May sales. So the May 2021 sales are a little bit larger than the May 2020 sales, which seems inconsistent with the 10% reduction. So I guess the question is, do the May sales indicate like March consumption?
This is AMI data, so this is May consumption, whereas our other stuff lags. But I would.
No, that's what I mean, though. It's going back a few slides, but we're a little bit ahead of May 2020, May 2021, more revenue, right? So my question is, does that represent consumption from like March and April?
Oh, on the revenue slides we showed you, yeah. So that's tied to our billing process, so that can lag, yes.
By 60 days.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think a little bit, I'm not surprised to see a little bit of a bump here in this May, just because I think too, what you're seeing is businesses probably kind of coming out of COVID here a bit. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's probably not that surprising here.
No, but I mean, the overall revenue for 2021, May 2021 was more than May 2020, which anyway,
right.
I don't want to delay us further, so.
And then we'll look at the expenditure side. So this is broken down by major objects. So the first one there being personnel services. Compared to that, 92% linear mark, we're lagging a little bit behind. We've lagged a little bit in personnel services all years on the expenditure side. I think just because we have some unplanned vacancies in there that are giving us some savings. And then the maintenance and operation expenses are actually just slightly ahead of budget there. That $27.6 million is about 5% ahead. Some of that is purchase of Sonoma water. Some of that's electricity rates that were a little higher than budgeted. Some of that is, additional bad debt that we booked this year because of those delinquencies we showed you. And then financing costs are kind of artificially right on the mark because we take those and just spread them evenly over 12 months, although we pay our bonds biannually. And then the capital allocation, that portion that we spread of operating costs to capital is pretty close to budget there, $4.2 million. It's right about 90%, 89.4%. Fire flow projects are about 42%. Those have been a little bit slow this year, but keep in mind, those kind of like the capital projects, we'll show you in the next slide the encumbrances that we have, and a lot of that money is encumbered, but just hasn't been actually put onto our books yet as an expenditure. And then district projects, same comment there, we're about 51%. But when we add in those encumbrances of $8.8 million, that pops your expenses up to $104 million, and you're right about 87% of budget. So that's about what we'd expect there. And that 8.8 million encumbrances is things like I think the biggest one there's well in excess of $3 million for the San Geronimo treatment plant emergency generators. You have some fleet costs in there, pipeline encumbrance that is in there, pipeline project encumbrance. So once you put those encumbrances in, our expenditures actually look pretty close to where we're budgeted. And then fund balance, we kind of alluded to that earlier in the conversation, but our restricted and designated fund is at $21.8 million. So that's the fund that we use for things like workers' comp and general liability. Rate stabilization reserve continues to remain at $9.4 million. We haven't dipped into that yet, but I think we are going to be dipping into that very soon. Fire flow fund, they have kind of slowed down a little bit on projects there to get that fund balance healthy. And you can see that at the beginning of the year, we were at $2 million. Now we're at $3.6 million. So that fund balance is looking much better. The pension reserve fund that we'll talk about later today remains at $2 million. And then capital project fund is at $24 million. So the operating unrestricted fund balance is $31.3 million. And we have a policy of maintaining 6 months of operating budget in balance, and we're 4.3 right now. Debt service coverages are healthy at three times. And then outstanding bonded debt is at $142 million. And you can see we've reduced that principal balance since July 1st, being the fiscal year, with payments on our major debt service. So that's where we look on the fund balances. And then COVID, this is not year to date. This is since inception of the event. So we've spent about $566,000 as a district on COVID impacts. A lot of that was deep spray building vehicles, which was in excess of $200,000. And then that sick leave that Vicki talked about that's allowed under the CARES Act, that was over $200,000 too. So that's where the preponderance of that expenditure was in those areas. So in summary, on the financial side, we're tracking pretty well with budget. We're tracking a little bit ahead on revenues, a little bit behind on expenditures, which is good from a financial standpoint. As you can see, our fund balances do look healthy, which is good, as we're probably going to rely on those to get through this drought to a certain extent. And then you can see from a financial standpoint, the COVID has been relatively minor event from an expenditure side. And then we added this slide on about conservation spending. I think Carrie was going to talk to this, but if you have questions on the rest of the presentation, I can take those now, or we can wait until we get through this slide, however you'd like to do it.
Yeah, maybe we'll just have the finish off and then we'll see if there's questions.
Very good. Good morning, board. Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager. So we wanted to provide a little bit more of a deeper dive into the conservation spending that we're seeing as part of our drought response. So this is going above and beyond our baseline expenditures that we were anticipating, or our budget that we were anticipating for this current fiscal year, and we'll of course roll into next fiscal year as well. There's been an increase in resources to assist the drought responses. Really is all hands on deck for our conservation program rollout. We have some new staff. We have 4 new temporary staff to assist with our programs, admin support, some summer helpers, and an intern. Internally, there's been some reassignments to really help with the ensure that we have an appropriate response. We're working across district divisions to provide a meaningful response. So we have project management, our call center has additional support. I'm looking at variance processing, so looking at the various expertise across the district divisions to help with those processing of those variances. Within communications, we have some assistance. And then also, of course, we've been numerous public events. Many of you board members have participated in some of those. And so we have staff assisting with those. Externally, we are looking at additional contracts. So we have a contract in place to assist with landscape area measurements. And we're also considering some additional contracts around looking at data analytics. So either working with Flume or others to kind of take a deeper dive into the savings that we're seeing based on the increased participation that we're looking at. As the board is aware, there's been some program enhancements. Specifically with Flume, we're seeing amazing 29 devices a day being purchased from our customers. We anticipate by the end of July, and another 900 devices will be out within the service area. As of today, I just looked, we have 1,000 that have been put in place. So we expect to have about 1,900 by the end of July.
Wow.
And you can see the associated expenditures with that program for those additional 900 devices. For our turf program, which really didn't launch until June 1st, so it's only been in place for, let's say, the 25th, 25 days. We're seeing about 5 signups a day. A couple of days ago, when I put this slide together, we were at 136 sites had signed up. Based on those pre-inspections, we're seeing about 1,000 square foot per site, some higher, some lower. And so those expenditures are expected to be about 408,000, and that's 408 just for those 136 sites, on average. Right now, we'll know more once the project's actually complete, right? And we go back and do that pre and post inspection. But right now, we're expecting about 408,000. All of our other programs, we are also seeing an increase in participation, and I look forward to providing the board more details on what that increased participation is. But for example, back in 2019, we had a pool cover incentive. We had 14 pool covers for the entire year being issued. In the last 7 weeks, since we increased or brought back our pool cover incentive, we've had 101 rebates issued. So, and that's consistent across all of the new programs and all of our programs that we currently have in place. And so I'm estimating approximately $10,000 per month for all the other programs as we had a huge uptake right when the initial rollout, and I think it's kind of going to level off. But of course, continued outreach will be, pushed to the community to promote those in a meaningful way.
Do you talk to the pool companies?
We've heard from many pool companies. Some are quite supportive of the opportunity to have this incentive in place. But they were thrilled that we're not going kind of further with other restrictions that had been considered for a number of reasons, which you've all heard.
Yeah.
How many pools do you think there are?
Oh, that's a good question. Director Russell, as part of our landscape area measurement program or initiative, we'll have that information in the coming months. So more to come on that.
Carrie, are you also measuring turf?
We are. So that landscape area measurement program is going to be parcel specific for our residential customers, and it will give us the square footage of various types of landscaping within each parcel. So square footage of turf, square foot of pools, shrubs, low water use plant material, et cetera, including like mulched areas, right, that are kind of not necessarily landscaped as well.
Yeah. Are you going to do commercial too?
Eventually we will. We're starting with residential. Of course, that's the majority of our service area, and it's directly tied to the state's efforts around assigning water budgets for based on residential customers. So we wanted to tackle residential up front.
And
it's important.
Are you using Google Earth or using drones? I mean, how are you getting the data?
Yeah, so we have a consultant who's using imagery, so aerial imagery for determining the square footage. It's using the same methodology that DWR used when they provided us district-wide measurements for our service area. And so we're using this as an opportunity to confirm DWR's data, but also provide more granular information that's parcel specific. And just to wrap up, we are, I think it's really important that the board hear that we are taking an unconstrained approach to resources, and we are feeling the support, and we're really, like I said, working cross-district divisions to pull in key staff to really be able to launch all these initiatives and address them in a meaningful way as quickly as we can, right? So there's just so many signups for our programs and so much uptake, which is wonderful, but it's been a lot for the water efficiency team. And so we are pulling in others and definitely feeling that support. So with that, I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thanks, Carrie. I have a couple of questions. So looking at what you've got here so far, it looks like it's a little over $500,000 that's been spent or allocated so far to the program enhancements. And I appreciate that there's this unconstrained approach, but I'm not sure what that means, because we are looking at other alternatives. So it would be helpful to get at least, arms as a board around what do you think your thinking is? Because as you say, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the TURF program. I expect that, in conjunction with Flume, because of course the Flume controllers don't save water in and of themselves. People have to actually act in order for those savings to accrue. so I'm very, very excited about the progress you're seeing, but do you feel that you're in a position to sort of estimate what resources we can or should be budgeting for this going forward? Because I think at $3 a square foot, which is exactly where we should be for landscape changeouts, we're going to be looking at, to really have an impact the way that we need to get to the 40% savings goal that the board has established district-wide. And, we may even need to go beyond that, under certain circumstances. What's your thinking about what we're realistically looking at to have a meaningful impact with that program?
So if I could, Carrie, just start, because I wanted to answer the first part of Director Kohler's question on what we mean by unconstrained. So I do want to be clear. What we mean by that is we are not looking at the budget, period. We are looking at all the programs, all the opportunities as we bring to the board and talk about kicking off other things and moving ahead, anticipating we tap the reserves or whatever we have to do. But there is no talk of it's not in the budget, we're financially constrained. So I just want to be very clear, that is off the table. This is not the place we're in. The budget is largely irrelevant for all of our drought-related projects, but namely conservation and communication-related activities. So that is atypical, certainly in any business, but a public agency like ours. But given where we are, that's the approach we're taking.
Okay, that's helpful. Ben, does that extend to, because I'm looking at Carrie's bullet here on new resources. I mean, it's great to have the administrative support, the 2 summer helpers, and the technician, but it sounds like we could also use, at least on a contract basis, just some additional bodies, right? I mean, if the turf program gets going, I think Carrie is going to need, and her team will need more out. They're going to need more capacity.
What we are having weekly discussions with Carrie, Lucy, and I on resources for conservation and thinking about where we can leverage existing internal resources or contracting. We, in fact, had a discussion with Mark Milan, as you know, bringing him on for additional support and talking about potentially, if we need it, boots on the ground, for example, for restaurants. Landscaping, we're talking about that too. As that kicks off, do we bring in some landscaping professionals to help with the measurements and supporting that program? So everywhere we identify a resource need, we talk about, should we, do we have the skill set internally? Can we carve out the capacity internally? Do we bring on temporary employees, or do we contract out? And that's a discussion we're continuing, and we'll be having that through the drought. Unconstrained resources.
Okay. I mean, I think that's exactly the right approach. So, let me commend your leadership on that. I just think we need to move down from that high level statement to what does that mean on a more concrete basis? Because, for example, I know that there have been, especially now that the turf program is being rolled out, there have been a lot of conversations about, messaging that, communicating that, and that really does require more capacity than we currently have. So I think it's fine that you're talking to Mark, but he's kind of a strategist. I mean, wherever that's coming from, I'm just concerned that I'm concerned that we have the resources when we need them, right? I mean, we still haven't implemented a number of the programs we've been talking about now for the past 3 or 4 months. And I had understood, perhaps incorrectly, Ben, that there were resource constraints on our ability, on our willingness to enter into contracts to do what we need to do on the communication side.
Yeah, that's well, with data analytics, Mark Milan, and there's a suite. We've been on a couple calls with them, a suite of opportunities that contract brings in a range of support, well beyond the strategic nature. So we also just amended our marketing, our advertising campaign contract for the second phase. So what we are looking for and identifying every opportunity. I do want to say there is some limit with all the work going on, but there is of doing everything tomorrow, right? We do need Carrie and her team to oversee some of the work and develop the new programs and try and hit it hard. And even something like restaurants, we're realizing, of course, sending out the initial letter and table tents, we're all going to restaurants here and still getting served water without request. So we do need to get boots on the ground and visit. And we're talking about all of these strategically and what resources and how quick we can go and where the constraints may be, and let's address them.
Okay, so I think that's all great. I think you're wise to make the point that not everything can be done tomorrow, which is why I'm really interested, especially from a financial perspective, in the priorities, right? So, I mean, Carrie, you can ground truth me on this, but it would seem to me, given experience in the West, in California and nationally, but these turf change out programs are our biggest opportunity to reach that 40% goal. And like I say, we may wind up going to a higher goal. So it seems to me if we're going to be prioritizing efforts, I guess I'd like to hear from you about that, because while that's a program that's likely to have the most impact in terms of water conservation and really as a long-term investment, right? It's not just a short-term thing. I've got nothing against table tents, and I think it's great you're doing them, but that's a very short-term today kind of thing. Whereas investing, working with our businesses and homeowners to invest in native landscaping and changing out, water wasteful turf, other non-essential turf, that's infrastructure. That's a long-term investment. So, I appreciate you can't get everything done tomorrow, but we can be prioritizing that today.
Absolutely. And we do have discussions on that, but largely we're taking an approach within a prioritized effort, all the above. In terms of landscaping, the benefit of that program is in the initial conversation with the customer, we say, we have you, we're going to move forward, do not continue irrigating that part of your parcel. So we're getting the savings immediately, and we can have some lag process, but we are keeping an eye on the resources to get out there and measure and move that forward, because we don't want a huge backlog. But as soon as they contact us and we're in communication with them, their irrigation stops. So we do get the water savings benefit immediately.
Okay, that's great. So I don't want to take up too much more time now because it's already almost 11. And I know we've got other agenda items, but I think for the future, it would be great to come back with a focus program on the turf change out in particular, again, because even though we're taking an all of the above approach, that really does seem to be the most highly leveraged in terms of reaching our goals as well as long-term climate resilience. So I think having a conversation about what resources are needed for that, both in terms of Carrie's staff, just people to process those applications and do the work that needs to be done to help those consumers, as well as the communications rollout. Because even though at this point, and again, I'm totally supporting the staff here. I mean, virtually everybody that I encounter, and of course this is anecdotal, but is aware that there's a drought. Nobody was aware, in conversations that I've had recently about the turf rebate program. So I just think we're messaging a lot of things about our programs, but I think that one isn't getting a lot of play. I will say Annie Laser seems to be by herself, a one-woman crusade to get everybody in the universe to use Flume. So yay, Annie. I would enlist her as a communications helper. Anyway, so I'm just saying, I think people haven't gotten the word yet about, and everybody should have a Flume controller. Don't get me wrong, I'm not picking favorites, but this program just really is our biggest opportunity to get through this in a sustainable way. So I just think it would be useful for the board to have a kind of a granular presentation at some point soon about the goals we're setting for ourselves and the resources we're putting into both implementation and communication.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Ben, are you sure this is the right committee to be having this? I mean, it doesn't exactly seem like logical to be in finance to me.
Right. This slide was a request to help the board understand the financial investments we're making in conservation. We will certainly continue the deeper dives and drought update, and we do have a dedicated meeting plan for July operations to talk about conservation in depth, both in terms of the long term, how it fits into the 10-year planning efforts, as well as going forward. So that's going to be a very deep and rich discussion, and we're planning and working on that now.
Thanks. I'm just concerned we may be misleading the public by accident. You know, they wouldn't necessarily expect this kind of an explanation or detail in a finance meeting, I don't think.
Okay, so with that, the last question I'll ask, and maybe this is a time for the future as well. We spoke briefly at the other board meeting, the recent board meeting, about penalties for high water users. So I do see that as a finance issue. I'm not going to ask for any detail on that now, other than to say that I think that should be part of any next conversation about drought response. I don't expect penalties will have a huge financial benefit to the community, but you know, it certainly won't. Well, I'll just say that, but I do think it's an important element. And one thing we should be thinking about on the financial side is you know, how we dedicate and whether we dedicate those funds to conservation efforts.
I agree, and I think we should dedicate
Yay. Okay. All right. Are there any other board comments? I'm sorry, Chuck, but that was the end of your presentation, right?
Yes, President Kohler.
Okay. Do we have any other board comments on any aspect of Chuck's or Carrie's presentations on this? Okay. Do we have, Terry, any public comments on this item?
We do not have any.
Okay. Then we're moving on to item 4, which is consideration of converting from bi-monthly to monthly consumer billing.
I have a question right off the top, Chuck. We've always been told this is expensive, and you're going to tell us that, I'm sure, but it says no fiscal impact.
Well, right now, it's just an information item. If we go forward.
Oh,
then
I see.
we will-
This
we'll be-
item has no fiscal impact. I got what you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if we pursue it, Director, absolutely, we'd have to refine the fiscal impact that we'll show you here. All right, so this item is discussing the conversion from our current bi-monthly billing to monthly billing. And I'm going to go through the slides here. However, we're joined by several people with a lot of expertise on this, namely Colleen Kanzaki is our customer service manager. She's on this call, as is Craig Lorenzen, who's our meter supervisor. And then we've got Colin Horton, who's our business systems analyst, who you can thank for a lot of the AMI data that we get for these presentations. So they've done a lot of work in kind of looking at what the implications would be operationally, financially, and otherwise of converting from our current system to monthly billing. So I thought I would start out just briefly with a bit of history. We had examined this before in 2017. However, the purpose of that second bullet there, that the scope did not include additional meter reading, when we looked at it in 2017, to my understanding, we just looked at splitting bills in two. We weren't increasing our actual meter reading, so the customer wouldn't get any additional data. They would just have a lower monthly bill, and that's what that project looked at. The vendor needed about 6 months for the project, which is remains, we think, a valid assumption going forward. And the cost to do that was about $338,000. That was one-time money. And then the annual ongoing cost for that bill splitting to make monthly bills was $650,000. And at the end of that, that project was abandoned again, because I think it was just really splitting bills. It wasn't actual additional meter reads, which is what we're looking at here. We did go out as part of this and just look at some of our comparator agencies to see what they were doing as far as AMI and whether they were on monthly or bi-monthly billing. So we looked at North Marin Water District. They're on bi-monthly billing, but they do have AMI implemented. East Bay Mud is on bi-monthly billing. They have a pilot program for AMI. Talking to them, they said they've installed about 18,000 meters, which is about 5% of their total. And if that program works out, then they will be going full AMI. And then Alameda County Water is on bi-monthly billing. They're currently installing AMI. I believe that began in March. And then we looked at Petaluma. They're on monthly billing. They do have AMI. The reason there's a little asterisk next to that yes is they Their AMI, I think, is called AMR because they actually do drive-by reads. I assume because of the topography there is how they actually collect the data from that. So they're not like getting constant real-time data from towers like some of these other agencies. Cotati's on bi-monthly billing. They do have AMI, and then San Francisco Public Utilities is on monthly billing, and they do have AMI. So just kind of
Chuck,
a look.
did you ask them why? Did you ask them why they're on bi-monthly if they have the data?
I did not ask why. No. We just asked them.
Could you check at least with North Marin and find out why they wouldn't have upgraded their system? It also seems to me that, while it would be desirable to have a double up the reads, it also, I think, is totally acceptable to divide the number by 2 and bill it monthly.
Mhm.
That way you don't
Yeah.
have to change the
Yeah.
system except for the actual billing.
Is
Okay.
that giving
So-
you real-time reading of how much water is being used?
It is. Yeah, and that's the case. And I know I've spoken with the CFO at North Marin on theirs, and I think for them, the reason they haven't gone to monthly billing is just the cost associated with that actual billing. And as you'll see later in our presentation here, when you start adding the costs on, as you start doubling postage and invoicing and all of that, it does add a considerable
Yeah, we know
amount of
we know
cost.
the numbers, Chuck. We've seen
Yeah.
them before, but the difference is nobody else does that. Chevron doesn't bill bi-monthly, PG&E doesn't bill bi-monthly, and they all have the same constraints, but they see it
Right.
as beneficial. So I mean, we understand the cost. That's kind of obvious, but and of course, we could put on a full court press to get people converted to receiving their bills electronically, in which there should be no cost, huh?
Yeah, that does reduce the cost on the billing, if we cut down the billing. But then if we receive the money electronically, then it's just additional bank fees. So you have some additional cost, but I don't know if it would be one-for-one necessarily. But yes, if we could
Well, I think
reduce paper,
we
if
should
we could
take a
reduce
look at
paper
that.
billing, that would.
And, we could encourage them to use ATM cards because there's a big change in the amounts. It's like a fixed fee of 45 cents instead of a percentage. As I understand it, we accept credit cards. That's my understanding of how it works.
Yeah, we do. And usually with a credit card, you have a fixed and a variable fee.
Right. But if it's an ATM, it's different.
You're
Yeah.
receiving the money faster, which has obviously an economic plus.
And it
Right.
smooths out cash flow a little bit, huh?
Sure.
It does. And at the end of this, we actually have some pros and cons. And that's one of the pros is that, monthly billing in general does smooth out your revenue flows. Absolutely.
It also has the effect of reducing the amount of the bill from sticker
Yes.
shock.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And as part of this, I think this is some of the questions you were asking. We put together some of the billing statistics we have right now. So total customer counts right now, we have a little north of 60,000. Annual invoices, we do 360,000. And then if we went to the monthly billing, that would double to 720,000. Online payments right now, as to what you were alluding to there, about a third of those are online, so 123,000 that we get online. We're split into 15 zones right now for meter reading, and those meter reading routes are 368 of them serviced by our meter shop. And then leak adjustments, we do a little bit over 1,500 a year. That's for calendar 20, but that's about what the average is every year, for an average of about $1,000 per leak adjustment per customer. And then AMI meters right now, we have 5,000 of those in the district approximately. And then your average bill, to your point of the split, is $235. We just did that average for residential. Obviously, institutional business customers are much higher. They're north of $500 a bill. But for residential customers, if you split that in two, then bill would be about $115 a month. So the next thing that the team looked at was just what the timing considerations are. And as you can expect, we'd expect this to be about a 6-month project, and kind of the long pole in the tent there is that SAP system update as before. could take up 6 months to upgrade the system. And then we'd have, personnel. Part of this plan would look at adding additional meter readers. We'd also be adding some additional customer service personnel. So recruitment on personnel, we assume would be about 3 months. And then training for people like meter readers is 3 months, but that could be compressed a bit. And Craig can talk more to that, but that is the meter readers start out with other readers learning how to do the job, and then they slowly move their way onto their individual routes. So it's kind of a lot of on-the-job training. So it doesn't necessarily mean 3 months of recruitment and 3 months of training to give you 6 months until they're ready. Those things can kind of be compressed a little bit. Route conversion is something that we're working on, but I think that would be well within that 6 month window. And then the 6 month window would take you to the December, January timeframe. And one thing that our meter shop supervisor, Craig, brought up is that we're currently in the process of upgrading those handhelds that we use for meter reading. And they're actually going to go to phones that will provide a lot more data to the meter reader in the field and allow that meter reader to transmit that data. That's in flight now and is expected to be done in December and January. So that's actually probably a good thing for project timing. We wouldn't want to be going out and buying those new meter readers now at $5,000 a piece and knowing that they're going to be obsolete in 6 months. So just a few things to consider in the timing of this project. And then we
Are they using, Chuck, are they using their own phones or these are company phones?
Craig, are you on the call? Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So it's a ruggedized smartphone, waterproof, wet touch if they're reading in the rain. So this would be a district provider.
MMWD phone.
MMWD phone, yeah, they're about $400 versus $5,000.
I was just concerned about running private water meter data off for a private phone, so that's cool.
Yeah.
And just speaking, you may or may not know this. I was a meter reader, LA Water and Power. I can assure you, it doesn't take 3 months to train a meter reader. I mean, from personal experience. So, I think that can be accelerated substantially. But like I say, if we just divided the reads by 2, you just leave things the way they are until we have the AMI in place.
Correct. All right, so we would have to make some staffing additions. We planned on adding 4 meter readers to double those reads. And then customer service would bring on customer service representative. And then we make an addition of 1 customer service rep 2 to give us that enhanced capacity.
How much does each meter reader cost, Chuck?
So
okay,
meter readers here, I'm just going to the next slide here because we'll answer
okay.
that. But doing some quick math here, it's about $150,000 a meter reader. The ongoing cost, that's salary and benefits all tied in there. So $650,000 for 4 meter readers, because that's $160,000 a piece. And then for the senior customer service rep, be $150,000, $136,000 for the CSR2. And then we looked at adding 4 trucks for the additional meter readers, and that we put that as a one-time cost of $120,000. And that, it's a one-time cost, but obviously those trucks would have to be replaced at the end of their useful life. So it would have some sort of an ongoing component to it. To increase the invoices would literally double. So to go from that 360,000 invoices up to $720,000 right now, it's about $250,000. It'd be an additional $250,000 annually for those. And then postage, just do the math at 50 cents for 360,000 additional bills, we're looking at $180,000 in postage. And then the SAP upgrade is about $300,000. It's interesting to note that's actually somewhat cheaper than we showed you in the historical, where we were just splitting the bill. It's actually cheaper to go to the actual monthly meter reading. So when you add that all up, we're looking about $1.36 million in ongoing costs and $420,000 in the one-time cost to get this system up and going. And I just, this is a kind of a cursory look, awaiting board's direction. We'd obviously be sharpening these numbers a bit as we went forward. And there's the one thing that I have not captured in here is any additional cost that we would have on the finance and accounting side. That's a little bit of an unknown. So I told you
Chuck,
we, yeah.
I have a question. I mean, when I read meters, which was a long time ago, we used our own vehicles. Is there any reason we don't have them use their own vehicles and pay them mileage or per diem?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Craig on that. Do you have an answer for that, Craig?
Well, while they're out in the field, it's often that they're doing more than reading, especially at the end of their route, they're going back and doing dig outs or fixing leaks or box repairs, lid repairs. So there's a lot of equipment and tools on their truck that they're using on a daily basis. So if it was 100% strictly reading, it would limit some of the things that they currently do in the field. Yeah, that could be explored, but it wouldn't align with our current model of meter reading.
Yeah.
No, I understand that, but I think it's time to think out of the box.
Yeah, Larry, I do think Craig's point just is an important one, that the classification is not just pure meter reader. It's kind of a meter reader mechanic that allows them to fix broken meters when they find them and that sort of stuff. And it's actually, from my experience, a pretty efficient model versus putting in work orders to have the mechanics then come out and do the repairs.
Yeah, our readers spend about 70 to 75% of their time reading, and then that remaining time is replacing old meters, fixing leaks, dig outs, trims, maintaining their routes, replacing lids. So that's kind of the ratio, and that's part of the reason why we came up with 4 additional readers, even though we currently have 8 that are that meter reader repair worker position.
And then we wanted to look at some of the pros and cons. So the opportunities here, obviously, is you have better visibility of what your usage is, both as a customer and as MMWD. So talking to agencies like North Marin Water, they can set the system up to almost immediately spot if you have a leak or something like that. So that would be a big opportunity for the district here. As Director Russell pointed out, and I think Raptelis mentioned in one of our 10-year financial forecast or financial plan meetings, if you go to monthly billing, you absolutely smooth out your revenue stream, which is a plus. And then I think an opportunity that we didn't put in here is also that, as you pointed out, it does make the customer's bills lower on a monthly basis and kind of comports more with what other utilities do. And then the challenge is obviously it's an expensive program. It's going to compete for project time. And the reason I put that in there is we just, especially with the drought now, we put a lot of additional work on staff with additional projects. So, if we went pursued a major project like this, we would just have to take a look internally and do some reprioritization. And then, as I mentioned too, this is just conducted in concert with the upgrade to handheld devices. That's not really that big of a challenge because really we imagine that's the project would take about 6 months, and that's when we're going to have those devices swapped out anyways. So at that point, that's the short presentation that we have on the conversion to bi-monthly billing, and we've got subject matter experts on the line here. So if the board has questions, we'd be happy to try to field those.
Thank you so much, Chuck. That was very comprehensive. Board conversation, I think I don't want to get out ahead of anybody, but Chuck and Ben, is what you're looking for here some board direction about whether and how to come back with a proposal on this?
Yes, President Kohler, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Sure. Okay, well, that said, who's first? Who has thoughts about this?
I'll go
I'll
first.
jump in. Take it away, Larry.
I still don't see much benefit from the program to justify the expense. I think the presentation is interesting because it gives us some financial parameters. As we were going through it, I was thinking, well, gee, if we got a bond to go to AMI, how much would our yearly AMI costs be? To sort of compare the cost benefit of doing this, which I think has not a good bang for the buck versus the other. So my
You're frozen, Larry.
thing to add, whether possibility their readers can their meter readers can tap into flume data, or is that would that be technical? Did you lose all that? Shoot.
I got you. Hey, Craig, if you're on the line, I think Director Bragman was asking if the meter readers can obtain flume data.
Right, yeah, I caught that part of the end of the question there.
Sorry.
I'm a big fan of the flume. I have one at my house in Petaluma. It's great for water budgeting and leak detection, 24/7 monitoring, but it does not give us the actual read. So the flume itself never knows the read of the meter. It just knows the consumption. It's more of a stethoscope listening to the meter and turning that consumption into a graph. But we wouldn't be able to, the current version of the flume, we would never be able to build off of it.
Okay, and then the other thing, and I mentioned this at an earlier meeting, hopefully you can hear me, is as we put in new meters, should we be considering putting in AMI meters, requiring AMI meters, so that we sort of slowly start peppering in AMI to kind of convert to that system, whether that would be something worth considering.
Right, and I can comment on that. So there are several AMI vendors, and there's a possibility that if we went district-wide, we may not use the vendor that we're piloting. And there's a lot of kind of bells and whistles that come with matching the meter to the endpoint, which is the endpoint is which transmitting the data, either cellular or radio. And if we knew exactly what vendor was going to be our district-wide solution, then yeah, I think it would make sense that every meter change gets that digital meter, and every new meter gets that digital meter. But we could actually be going down a road that we'd have to kind of reverse later. So we're more of a holding pattern.
We already have 5,000 out there, so.
So if I could just briefly add just on the status based on the drought and the discussions with the board, we are moving forward with the next step for AMI of getting out on RFP and bringing someone in to help define the options that we would bring to the board with a recommendation of what technology and how that may or may not fit with the systems that we have installed. AMI is a very significant, great, but very significant change to many, many business practices in the organization to do it right and do it well. So we really do want to take that approach, but we've accelerated our thinking and timing with that, and we're moving ahead.
Yeah, and the other thing is just to take it on a more modest scale, which would be to kind of replace on a case-by-case basis with an eye towards expansion. So
now, Craig, the new meters we're putting in do have compatibility, right, with the AMI systems. Is that the right way to characterize it?
Yeah, the majority of them are a traditional analog meter, but a simple register change could make them AMI ready. So just replacing the analog register with the digital one. That's what North Marin, they were about 80% of their system was based on a simple register change, which meant you didn't have to remove the entire meter body. So we could, pivot. Even the meters we're installing now could be relatively, easily and a low cost converted to an AMI ready meter.
And what's delaying the decision on what system we're going to go with?
There's not a delay. We just want to be thoughtful in terms of understanding. There's quite a number of vendors.
Yeah, I know, I'm well aware of that, but we've been doing this for 15 years. Okay. I mean,
right.
this is not something new.
Right. I would say, Director Russell, what's changed is based on the discussions with the board in context of the drought and generally, we are moving ahead with the planning efforts for AMI. So it's no longer a capital project on a list. It's a capital project that's moving forward.
And I'm sorry,
Okay,
I should know that
I still don't see what the delay is in making the decision. I mean, the census units, you know, they match up with our meters, and I believe the pilot program is identical to what North Marin did, that it's a change out of the register, not a change out of the meter. Is that correct?
Right, there's
Our pilot.
technology, so there's the radio towers, there's cell, there's hybrids, and then there's the specific vendors that all have pluses and minuses in terms of the features, in terms of compatibility.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I'm
with
well
our
aware, Ben,
system.
but you know, I didn't agree with the decision to use cell phone to begin with. Okay, you know, I think it's not what most people are doing. So whatever, but you know, it was argued to be implementable easily as opposed to putting system-wide Wi-Fi or something like that to achieve it. But you know,
So
I
would
think we
expect-
should. Go ahead.
I would expect within a number of months, 6 months or so, we'll be bringing to the board the alternatives with a recommendation of moving forward with a technology and a vendor. So but I do think taking the time to assess the options and ensuring for such a significant shift in the organization in many ways that we get it right and really have the opportunity to have some element of decision-making of the alternatives in front of us.
No, that's cool. But you know, like I say, it isn't rocket science, and there's a lot of water under the bridge in this area already. A lot of folks have converted, and
Yeah.
you know, each of the vendors has their own pitch, and each of them says, you know, we're the cat's meow. But you know, the bottom line is they kind of all do the same thing. Some do it better, no question. But you know, I thought that where we were headed from the last round, which is back to Paul Helliker's days of this, was that because of the Badger meters being in place already, the census meters, that we were kind of pushing in that direction to go in that lane. But you know, perhaps that's changed.
Well, I think it's probably a leading option for the reasons you note, but and based on this conversation, and I know broadly there's across the board interest on this, we'll look at accelerating the pace of this assessment piece.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, of course, is that the vendors are more than happy to finance this. So if we're interested, you know, obviously it's more expensive, but it has a much smaller capital expenditure, obviously.
Right.
So I've got a hard stop at 11:30. So I'd like us maybe if we can get back to the question at hand about what direction to go forward with this monthly billing. You know, looking at the ongoing expense, I can't help but wonder if we, you know, to make a decision like this, the point of doing this is that we think that this will result in greater awareness about water use and result in a reduction in water use because people will see how much water they're using and go, oh my goodness, I want to meet that 40% goal that we've been messaging. I just wonder whether for the cost, whether, you know, putting that money into other things will generate that same yield, especially if it's conservation and efficiency, things like that will have even an ongoing benefit into the future, whether that isn't the better way to go while we, you know, move toward an AMI system or something else like that. So I have in order for me to think about whether this is worth our time, I feel like that's part of, or the cost, that this is a consideration that we ought to be, that's how we should be making this decision. And I'm not sure we have the information to do that yet.
I want to get my 2 cents worth in here. I think it's a very good idea to do it. Not only do we get the information faster, which is obviously good for conserving water, but it also smooths out the cash flow. It smooths out the financial system. The money in generates interest. It's got a bunch of pluses there that seem to me something we should have done a long time ago, quite frankly.
Okay, so given that Monty has a hard stop, as do I, and we have another item, I don't know that we've successfully given you staff direction. You've got a few different concerns happening here. I think if I could summarize, I would say the board has not yet come to a consensus about whether this is a good idea. There's some people who think it's great and we should go ahead. There's others who feel like we need more information. So Ben and Chuck, do you feel like you have what you need to develop a next sort of a proposal with the information that Monty described kind of built around it? Or is this something that you feel you want to take back and maybe do more information, more consideration and, come back with another information item before bringing an action item forward?
I would say it feels to me, based on the board comments, but I can stand to be corrected, that we probably do need one more informational item to come to the board.
I think so too. I think Monty makes some strong points. Yeah. And Jack, I also hear what you're saying about wanting to move forward expeditiously. So, maybe we can get that information pulled together. Because I know none of you have anything to do and you're super just like hanging around, just, looking for new tasks. So,
well, the economic burden of it is offset by added income that was not it's not measured in there. We don't know what that is. So
why would we get added income, Jack?
Just on interest, you get the money faster. You have money in the bank faster.
It's the same read. You're just dividing it in two.
You're getting it sooner, though.
Right. I think we just need that information, guys. I really don't want to continue the argument.
Yeah,
I think we just need the information. I think Jack makes a point, and I think we're going to leave it to Chuck to provide us with that information so that we really see those numbers.
Bottom line is $1 today is worth more than $1 a month from now.
Not that much.
But right, and that's the question, guys. So we're going to let Chuck.
And I agree. I agree completely with Jack.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, so let's let Chuck. Are we good, guys? Are we good having Chuck answer this question and the questions Monty raised, and I think it does make sense to bring this back as an information item again before I agree with Ben that I don't think we're ready to ask the staff to do a proposal. Is that okay?
I think we need to take a comprehensive look at the whole universe.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay, with that, Ben and Chuck,
Was the information, excuse me, Cynthia, was the information on the slides already provided to us? I know there was a packet. I didn't really look at it yet. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And not to belabor it, because Director Kohler, you're doing the great thing to lead this on. One of the things I'd like to see, I feel like this is that AMI would obviate the need for this, and I'm wondering, whether dedicating that same amount of money into accelerating AMI again maybe that is a better investment over time. So
it doesn't obviate the need, Monty. It doesn't obviate the need. It's the same question. That's the question I asked Chuck. Why does North Marin, who has the data, not bill monthly? So that they face the same decision.
I don't want to go backwards. It's not about billing. It's about getting us the information that we're looking for and the results. So if that could be taken into consideration in providing us the economic information that helps guide our decision making, that would be great, because I think that would help us to make a decision around this at a later point.
If it's information we want, we will see it a lot faster with this going to monthly billing than we will with AMI. That strikes me as a longer range project.
So I think to answer both Jack and Larry's and Monty's questions, I think Chuck and Ben, when you come back, please provide also at least a rough time frame and cost for AMI district-wide, because I think while I agree with Monty in many ways, I think AMI is so expensive that we're looking at implementation over a very long period of time. even with borrowing and all the rest of it. Although WIFIA is now, anyway, I don't want to get us too far off because it is 11:19 and we have another agenda item that we need to turn to. Although, I don't know, can we pause here for a minute? I'm just wondering, we've been at this for 2 hours and I think we're going to lose both of us in 10 minutes. So let me just ask Chuck and Ben, does it make sense to just, and let me ask the pleasure of the board, should we put off the pension strategies conversation until the next finance meeting? Or is there a feeling we have to do it today?
I would prefer that. I've got a deadline. I got to get something filed today,
Yeah.
so.
So we now have 3
That
board
works for
members.
Steph.
Yeah, it works for me, no problem.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, great.
That's
So
fine.
I wanna,
Again, I don't know that it belongs in finance, so it seems to me it should be in the compensation committee, but whatever.
just want to
Okay.
make sure that we're allowing for any public comment on the last item before we,
Oh, yes, I'm
proceed.
There are
sorry.
none,
Okay,
none.
thank you.
thank you.
But is the last item the previous item, Molly?
The last item was the bi-monthly billing, yes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. That's what you're asking about. I wasn't sure if you're talking about the
Yeah.
next item or the
Yes,
last.
no, it sounds like we might defer that.
We're deferring the next item and just to complete the close on the bi-monthly billing, the staff is going to come back with information along the lines that the board has asked for, and including, I just don't want to put too much on you guys, but I do think it would be useful to have, again, very high level on AMI, just time frame and cost. And maybe as part of that, again, not immediately, but down the road, because it looks like there's going to be so much money shoveled into WIFIA and the SRFs over the next year or so, we should be considering that as well, because it may be that we will be in a position to have significant federal low interest loans or even grants for AMI, which could accelerate the process.
Cool.
I think they're talking about 3 billion for WIFIA, but anyway. So with any other comments on this? Okay, we're deferring item 5 until a future meeting. And I think with that, we're gonna cut everybody loose to get back to your day.
Thank you very much.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Okay, thanks, everybody.